while others suffered from extreme storms triggered by the chaotic shifts in the atmosphere. What was once predictable seasonal weather had become erratic and deadly, with hurricanes, blizzards, and torrential rains sweeping across the planet. In major cities, survival had become nearly impossible. Without functional power grids, heating systems failed in colder regions, leaving millions exposed to freezing conditions. In warmer areas, acid rain and toxic air made outdoor survival just as deadly. People who had not evacuated early now struggled to find shelter, food, and clean water. Many underground bunkers and shelters, initially thought to be safe, were filling with toxic air seeping in from above. One of the most devastating consequences of this global disaster was the collapse of agriculture. By the third month, the lack of sunlight had completely halted photosynthesis in many regions. Crops withered and died, and soil, covered in volcanic ash, became too acidic to support new plant growth. The famine that had started shortly after the eruptions had now become a full-scale global food crisis. Nations with food reserves found themselves struggling to ration supplies, and black markets emerged as people desperately sought anything edible. Some turned to hunting wildlife, but animal populations had been just as affected by the environmental shift. Many species that couldn't adapt to the extreme conditions were already facing extinction. The oceans, which had already suffered from pollution and acidification, now became even more unstable. With sunlight unable to reach the water's surface, plankton, the foundation of the marine food chain, began to die off in alarming numbers. This led to the collapse of entire marine ecosystems. Fish populations dwindled, and coastal communities that depended on fishing for survival found themselves without a food source. Rising levels of toxic gases in the atmosphere also led to acid rain, further poisoning the water supply. Rivers and lakes became contaminated, making fresh water even scarcer than before. Societies had reached a breaking point. Governments that had managed to maintain some level of order in the first few weeks of the disaster were now overwhelmed. Global trade had completely collapsed, and many countries were forced into isolation, relying only on whatever resources they had left. Some regions attempted to form self-sufficient communities, but with so few resources available, conflicts erupted over food, water, and habitable land. Wars once fought over political and territorial disputes were now fought over basic survival. As humanity struggled to hold on, scientists and engineers worked desperately to find solutions. Underground farming experiments were being conducted using artificial lighting, but scaling them up fast enough to feed the population was nearly impossible. Filtration systems were being developed to remove toxins from the air and water, but access was limited, and most people had no way of getting to these resources. Some had even begun to speculate about long-term survival options